Assume you're preparing for an interview where the job description talks about migrating an on-premise ETL tool. In this case, ETL stands for extract, transform, and load tool like IBM DataStage, but it could be any ETL tool to cloud. So it could be any cloud, whether it's AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle. So how would you prepare for that interview, or what all things you need to learn and understand? I'm going to cover in this video. Hi, this is Atul from Team K21 Academy, where we help you in your journey to learn cloud and cloud native technologies. So give you a very quick background and understanding so you understand the whole concept, what you can expect in this video. So this was one of the individuals like you who came into the program and they were preparing for the for job where the requirement was which I mentioned. So if you are in a situation like that, and if you're preparing for the interviewer would expect you to have the full picture about full knowledge about as you working as an architect or solution architect or someone as a senior leadership role or someone who is looking at this migration. You should be first of all familiar with the cloud options. So what all cloud you'll be taking? So what are the options available in cloud? Be it like AWS, you have Glue. In Azure, you have Azure Data Factory. In Google, you have some tools like in Google, as well as in Oracle Data Integrator, and so on that you have. So you should have a basic understanding of those things, what all options you have taken, and then you should also have the high-level overview of about this migration, what all process you're going to take. So that's what I've covered in this video, which is taken from a clip from our inside the program, inside the job preparation module. So you might hear some references about the training program or some links. So ignore those points and just understand and say, if you're in a situation where you're preparing, or even if you're not preparing for interview, you have a situation like that, how would you consider that? So we'll talk about everything about these ETL tool on-premise and cloud, and a high level. We're going to keep it high level as well. Now, after watching this, if you have any questions, leave them under comment section in the below this video. With that, let's look at this. How would you prepare for this interview? Hey there, this is Atul from Team K21 Academy, and in this video, I'm going to talk about how to migrate your ETL tool, and it could be any ETL on-premise. In this case, we are taking an example of IBM DataStage from on-premise to cloud. Now, the cloud could be anything. It could be, or any cloud, be it AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, but I'm going to take in the context of Azure. Now, to give you some background, this is one of the what do you call this is one of the the interview question being asked, or one of the job description where an interviewer was asking about they had a requirement to migrate their ETL on-premise ETL tool, which they were using IBM InfoSphere data storage to migrate, and they were planning to go to Microsoft Azure cloud, but I'm going to keep it generic initially, and then I'll go a little bit deeper into the context of Microsoft in the context of Microsoft Azure as well. And as we proceed, there were a few other things which were covered inside or in the requirement, and saying how we can use Terraform, which is an infrastructure as a code tool, including some database migrations as well. So for database migration and infrastructure as a code, Terraform, I'm going to keep it high level. There is separate trainings where we go deeper into explaining these concepts as well. So to give you some context, we'll begin with, first of all, what does this migration means? ETL. We'll give a brief overview about what is a ETL extents. A lot of you guys might already know, but for someone who's a complete beginner, what is an ETL extract, transform, load? What are the common use cases of ETL tools? And then we're going to look at the ETL tools offered by the cloud provider. We're going to look at Microsoft Azure, this is the primary focus, but we'll also look at Amazon AWS, which is Glue. We'll also look at GCP. They have few offerings, and which one is right for you based on the role you're playing. Then we'll also look at Oracle Cloud. They have an on-premise tool, ETL tool like Oracle Data Integrator. And then compared to with cloud, they have two offerings, Oracle Integration Cloud and ODI, Oracle Data Integrator Cloud Service as well. And compared to that, we'll briefly touch base with, because IBM also, they themselves have an offering on-premise, which is DataStage, which is eventually we want to migrate or planning to migrate to IBM Cloud Pack for data. Then we'll look at actual migration, high level overview about that migration, which are different phases: assessment and planning phase, proof of concept phase, migration, actual execution, testing and validation, and then cutover and go live date as well. Or at the time of go live. I'm going to keep it high level because, as I said, this is to prepare you for the interview. This is one of the guy the individuals who is part of our data on cloud, on specifically she was from a Azure data cloud, but we same concept can be used in if you have are doing a part of AWS data cloud or any job oriented program for that reason. Also, what are the things you should be considering when you're planning? So this is a holistic overall picture about as a this architect, as someone who's overall looking for migration. Also, what are the tools consideration? We're keeping this in this case now as your data factory, but if there is a similar requirement like for AWS or Oracle or Google, we'll talk about that as well. And then later towards, I'm going to briefly touch base with the SQL migration, database migration, but we in our Azure, in our multi-cloud, we cover migration as a whole, migration of 7R migrations and other things. So I'm going to keep it high level for now here, but if you have any questions, you can cover there. And then finally, how you can use Terraform as well. So that's what the overall background is. So let's begin with first. Oh, by the way, this is Atul. I think I've said at the start as well, but any questions, anything that is not clear, or you want to go a little bit deeper, leave a comment in below this video. There should be an option to leave a video comments for that reason. So let's first look at ETL. I'm going to keep it high level. We'll share this document link so you can go deeper and understand. But ETL, as name stands for extract, then transform, and then load, finally load. So extract may be a different data sources, could be a relational databases, it could be data coming from multiple streams, batch job, it could be unstructured data and so on. And then you have a transformation engine, which is transforming the data. It could be maybe data format, maybe cleansing the data, all those things transforming, and then eventually loading that into typically used to be data warehouse solution, but it could be data lake, lake house, and so on eventually. So I'm going to keep it high level here, ETL. Now, if you look at the use cases, common use cases, as I said, data warehousing, it used to be in 80s and 90s, and those were part of data program. We're going to go deeper into that. Let me open that and show it to you from a data warehouse and data lake point of view. That's a perfect touch point here for you. Yeah, so this is a slide from our data engineering program in data engineering basics. There's a history about you have a data warehouse in 80s where you had the data coming from a different sources and then going into the ETL. Using ETL, you were using data marts and building BI reports, etc. Then you had data lakes, which came in 2010s and so on. And then a data lake combination of that data warehouse and a data lake became a lake house as well. So you probably might be using ETL for primarily for data warehouse solutions, but you also can use this tool for data migration. If you have a data migration requirements, you can use that, or for reporting analytics purpose as well, as you see here for BI reports, etc. as well. You could use that data warehouse tool, common tools for that. Now, what are the different tools available? ETL tools on cloud. So there are four major clouds that we work on, or we teach and train mainly on AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, but I'll add IBM as well because we're talking in the context of IBM. We need to migrate IBM tool that we're talking about. So Microsoft has on-premise, which is the SQL Server Integration Service, which is SSIS, which is on-premise ETL tool. And then you have for on the cloud, they have Azure Data Factory as a main ETL tool. Now, I'm not going to go in detail. I'm going to go high level here, but you can understand the differences between these, and you can go through this document to understand a bit more about the pros and cons of each. Everyone or most of the customers I see are moving towards cloud. So maybe that's a good option to learn Azure Data Factory if you have not done. Azure Data Factory, as I said, is an ETL tool. You're extracting the data from a different data sources, on-premise databases, external databases, cloud databases, or third-party databases as well. And then we have a lot of use cases inside that Azure Data Engineering program, where you'll be seeing data extracting from, for example, Salesforce or Oracle ERP, and there are a lot of use cases are happening, or maybe within Microsoft Azure as well, and extracting and putting into using Azure Data Factory to build a lake house as well. So then you do orchestration, which is you ingest, you intake, and then store the data into maybe a data warehouse solution, or maybe a lake house as well, or maybe Azure Synapse as well. And then you can do analysis of that using your Power BI, BI reporting, and so on. There are other analytics services as well. Similar to that, in AWS, you have Glue, AWS Glue, which is a main ETL tool. But then with that, you also have the Glue can also do data cataloging and a lot of other things that you see here. So you have a lakehouse in AWS, which is S3 acting as a lakehouse, and then you're using Glue ETL tool to extract the data and putting, and then you can run some crawlers and then do cataloging of for business, your business team or data team and data architects as well. Now, Google Cloud, they have three solutions. One is cloud data flow. That's the main ETL tool that they have a data flow. Again, you can read more on cloud data flow. Will in our Google Cloud training program, we're going to go deeper into these topics as well. Then you have a data fusion, which is again more on a visual interface or more for a graphical user interface based for building ETL pipelines. And you have a data proc, which is Apache Spark to run on solutions on Apache Spark. Now, if you want to read which one to use when, primarily most of the time you'll be using Cloud Data Flow, but then in certain scenarios you might want to use a Data Fusion or a Data Proc for Google Cloud if you're using. These are the best use cases, and then in what scenario it's ideal for, you can read further as well. Now, similar to that, in Oracle, they have Oracle Data Integrator. Those working on Oracle, you have ETL, which is the main ETL tool, Oracle Data Integrator. They also have a Golden Gate, but that's mainly for data migrations from a homogeneous or heterogeneous data sources. You can have it, but that is changing the data at a SQL level or a data capture level itself, which is I'm not covering here. That particular product here, but Oracle Data Integrator is their main tool that you have. Now, on cloud, they have two solutions. One is Oracle Data Integrator Cloud Service. So it's implementation of ODI, but on cloud, which you have, they have ODI cloud service. But they also have Oracle Integration Cloud. So if you are working on that point, you can have a look at then OIC versus ODI CS. And the reason why I'm explaining all these things are when you're designing, let's suppose you have a requirement to migrate a on-premise ETL tool, you have to consider what are the various options available on the cloud and then pros and cons of each, and then you reach to a conclusion. So it's good to have these, or maybe when you're appearing for the interviews, you need to say that these are the few options we considered, and then based on the pros and cons, and based on that we reach to this particular conclusion, in this particular case Azure cloud, which is Azure Data Factory as well. So OIC and ODI CS, you can understand the difference between what are the main best use cases, and where OIC is more for hybrid integrations, mainly API led, but ODI is more for data specific. If you have a huge amount of data, that's when you'll be using ODI, but OIC can also do the same task as well. Similar to that in IBM, IBM have IBM DataStage. That's where the actual requirement was that they need to migrate IBM DataStage ETL tool and then going to the cloud pack for data. This is their cloud offerings. You could have gone to that, but client already had a lot of Azure, Microsoft Azure implementation. So they wanted to go to move those things onto Microsoft Azure Cloud as ETL. So they have on-premise DataStage, and IBM Cloud has a cloud pack for data. Now, that is where the actual journey now, if you're appearing for the interviews, you're going to talk about in a high level terms as well. So if you look at the Azure Data Factory, to look at the migration overview, the IBM Data Stage to Azure Data Factory, it's not a straightforward thing. You have to carefully plan things, and it's a whole strategy where first and most important is you need to do the assessment of what you have on-premise and plan the things. Then you're going to do a proof of concept where you'll pick some part or a subset of the actual migrations that you want to do. And then you actually migrate that or execute that migration that you've done. And then you do test and validation where you test and see what you've done actually works. And you're going to do it on one or two use cases first. And then you can, depending on the number of ETL jobs that you have in on-premise. And that's what you're going to identify in the assessment phase. And then finally, you'll do a cutover and go live as well. I'm going to go a little bit shorter here, but let me cover other things that you need to consider as well. So the most important is skill alignment. Now, whether you have one person who's handling both the data stage from IBM and Azure Data Factory, or you have two guys, ideally someone who has a knowledge, or if there are two-person, make sure that, or if you have one person, make sure they have a good knowledge of both data stage and as well as Azure Data Factory, or you need two different person, one for handling data stage, one for handling the data factory as well. So that's very, very important. Not only that, but the Azure Data Factory then in turn will be using other things as well, like SQL, network storage. So and the workflows, make sure you take care of that. Same thing is with the integration needs, like in terms of security. That's something without saying the person who's handling that should have good knowledge. You also need to cover costs, compliance, security, and change management. This is more on a high level from a project management point of view or the design point of view. Also tools. you need to consider, or someone who's implementing, you should be knowing, or the person who's migrating to should be knowing Azure Data Factory, no doubt about it. But blob storage and data lake, this is again in part covered in depth in the Azure Data Engineering program. So blob storage, data lake, SQL databases will be working. Also, then security center as well as networking, the cost management, Power BI, those are some of the things you'll be working a lot more as well. Also, there'll be a planning and assessment and planning toolkit. There's a whole migration path is completely a very big ball like task in itself. We're going to cover separately on migration part, of, especially actually databases, data migration part. I'm here keeping it just a ETL context point of view for now, but make sure you are familiar with the Microsoft assessment and planning toolkit that's covered separately in multi-cloud on migration, where we look at 7 hour migrations and so on. So these are some of the tools that you need to consider as well. Now go through this high level and make sure you prepare from on a little bit on terms of what all things you'll be doing for assessment and planning, building a proof of concept where you will be actually selecting a subset of workflows, building ADF, configuring ADF, and then put some jobs that you'll be aligning and building it. Then you, of course, migration um, execution checklist. Again, this is where you need to decide whether how you want to migrate those things. And again, there'll be a lot of work required as well. So I'm not going to go into deeper right now. From an interview point of view, high level should be good enough for you to explain, and then go as you have done as your data factory in labs and project work. You can then talk in issues around that point of view. So that's another one. Now, uh, with that, you probably might be asked to understand the migration. So make sure you are thorough with migration of applications, databases, and data, and mainly in this case, data and databases only. So there's a separate a program, separate videos about SQL Server migration from on-premise to Azure SQL databases. These are the phases we say: discover, assess, migrate, cut over, and optimize. Also, there are 7 R5 migration phases. And the whole migration itself, there is a big topic that you need to go through. If you're part of Azure Data Engineering, where we're going to go deeper into and understand those things as well. There'll be also some document links. I'm going to put this below this video inside the program. Inside, this is like that. You will have on cloud school. We're migrating everything from our portal to this cloud school, where you will be seeing other classes as well. We'll talk about these a little bit separately, but you will see uh, somewhere here like this, the way we have done AWS, we're going to see data, or Azure, you'll see data specific whole data migration and database migrations onto cloud as well. So look at that as well. And then um, from a database migration point of view, database migration itself is a big topic that we're going to cover separately. I'm going to keep it outside, but make sure you prepare when you're preparing for interviews, prepare for the database migration, SQL Server migration as well. There are multiple options available depending on the requirements. You probably would like to consider one of those multiple migration options as well. Um, so on a high level too, if you're doing migration, again, I'll keep it separate. I'll put it in the links and then you can go through separate part as well. And the final piece is how does infrastructure as a code can play in a role. So when you're provisioning these ETL tools like Azure Data Factory on cloud, you will need Azure Data Factory, but of course you need storage, you will need other things like networking, databases, SQL databases as well. And you're going to run these multiple times in multiple environments. And for that, you can automate this whole thing using automation tools like you have in Azure. You have Azure Resource Manager, ARM templates. You also have Azure Biceps. You can also write your own script, but the most important is you these days companies prefer Terraform. Terraform is infrastructure as a code, so you can use the Terraform. So build, automate a lot of these provisioning of Azure Data Factory network, a lot of jobs that you're building, a lot of these things you can do that. So make sure you're familiar with a little bit Terraform. You can talk, especially in the interviews, and then if you want, you can go deeper. We have a separate program on Terraform, automating this entire infrastructure build using Terraform. So just to give a glimpse again, as I said, I wanted to keep it high level so that you can talk in the context of in the interviews. And main important is you know enough about these high level, and then if you want to go deeper, you can go deeper as well. So just do a quick recap. If you're migrating ETL from, in this case, example of IBM DataStage, then you do it from on-premise to cloud. You have few options. You consider those options, and based on the actual requirement and a lot of things like what what is your actual eventual goal on cloud? What is the main data platform. Is it Azure? Is it Google? Is it Oracle? Is it AWS? Or is it something else? Based on that, you reach out to the conclusion of the tool, which I've already given some of these tools here. And these are the migration phases, which will be irrespective of which tool you pick, or sorry, which eventual target cloud you pick. The high level overview and path is going to remain same, which is assessment, planning, proof of concept, migration, testing, and cutover. And then you also need to consider things um, that you might trip you off as well, and tools that you should be familiar with. I hope that makes sense. If you want to cover separately the database migrations or infrastructure as a code or anything else, leave them under comment section. Otherwise, we look forward to see you. If you have any other interview questions, ask them as well, and make sure we have a detailed interview preparation, resume preparation, all those things. Make use of that as well. With that, this is Atul from Team K21 Academy. I'll see you in another video like this where you have some requirements where you build it. Otherwise, make sure you perform these hands-on lab with respect to Data Factory, with respect to Google Cloud or AWS Cloud or Oracle Cloud and whatever cloud you're working. All the best and good luck. Hey there, if you're enjoying this video and would like to go deeper and become an expert and master on data engineering on Microsoft Azure Cloud in order to get a high paying job, then I would like to invite you for a free class that I'm doing where I'm bringing a Microsoft certified trainer and a data expert. We'll be talking everything about Microsoft Azure Cloud, how to learn in this in depth, including everything related to both certification as well as in order to get a high paying job. We'll be talking about 12-week roadmap and all the hands-on labs you should be performing. So if you're interested, check out on k21academy.com/Azure Data 02.